Archer Monologues. Demon Clone. It's February 23rd, 2017. Oh yeah. Did you expect me to start right out in the beginning? Just start out after I give you the name of the show and the name of myself? And just start out just saying rant and rave things? Did you expect me to do that? If so, maybe I'm actually getting across to you. Anyhow, not going to do that this morning. I think probably I'll let it grow a little bit slowly until the festering pustulence erupts all over you. No, I'm just kidding. I'm being gross. Here's the thing. All right. Okay, just hold on. Just not even 2 minutes into the show, I'm going to take a break. Aren't I just a lazy bastard? I'll be back. All right. Okay, let's go with this one. Atheism. I used to be a lot of things. I mean, I slipped in and out of phases of things, just not because I was actually committed to that particular philosophy or, say, religion or religious thinking. I was interested. I was curious. And I was raised, well, when I was a little kid, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old or so, maybe up to 6 or 7, my grandmother was persistent and insistent that I be taken to church. And I got to tell you, and I love my grandmother. She was probably one of the better human beings on the planet, all things considered. But as often happens with grandparents, they get old. And they die. My grandparents were on both sides of my family. My grandmother and grandfather on the one side, and my grandmother and grandfather on the other side. Mother and father, parents of my parents. And my grandmother on my mother's side was, shall we say, probably typical in some sense. She was pretty much a country girl. She was, shall we say, somewhat obsessed with this Christian thing. And she was persistently annoying with her beliefs and her view of things. And yet, she was a good, kind, and generous woman. Thrifty. Make no mistake about that. Absolutely thrifty. It was often joked that she still had the first dollar her husband ever earned. She handled the money in that family. Sometimes I felt sorry for my grandfather, but other times I realized that my grandfather was probably a good guy. He died quite a long time ago, and probably 25 years before my grandmother finally passed away, at around 90, give or take. And so I missed out on my grandfather on that side, my mother's side, because I was young when he passed away. But my other grandfather on my father's side also passed away young. I was about 3 or 4 years old, I believe, when he died. And I was fond of him. And I was fond of both of my grandparents. I was fond of them in a sense. But being a kid and being headstrong and independent and a thinker, and I don't say that as a brag, I was a thinker. I thought. I used my head and I was logical. Even at an early age, at say 12, 7 years of age, I was logical. And when puberty set in, I became not only logical, but I also became quite a sexual being. As may be said about a lot of teenage boys. But at any rate, what I'm saying here, what I wanted to talk about, was the fact that my grandmother would tell my mother, and in front of me, in earshot of me, say, "You need to take that boy to church." And sometimes my grandmother would even pick me up, unless I was staying with her for the weekend or whatever. She would actually drag me off to church. I being the person that I was, which probably is not a whole lot different than what I am now, to some degree, except I was less knowledgeable, and I was younger, and I was more prone to be obstinate in the face of adversary. But you know what I mean. So my brother insisted, and I said, I had no say in the matter. It was like I was at her house on the weekend. It was Sunday morning, and by golly, we were going to church, and I was going. And there wasn't any question about it. There wasn't any debate there. I mean, I didn't say, don't think so. No, not going. I was like 6 or 7 years old. What did I know? And what kind of power did I have? And then I felt that I had to justify going. I mean, since I didn't resist going, didn't say, no, not going, like I would now, perhaps, or later in my life at that time. But I was pretty much dragged off to church whether I liked it or not. Got to dress up in my Sunday go-to-church clothes. I was not a pretty sight, trust me. I mean fashion sense, because my grandmother, who bought me a good deal of my clothes at that point in time, had no fashion sense whatsoever. And being thrifty, as she was, she would go to rummage sales and yard sales, for flea markets, whatever, and pick up shit that's like used, albeit in good condition, and give it to me on holidays, like my birthday and Christmas, and sometimes just anytime. I don't remember my grandmother ever getting me a toy for Christmas or my birthday. Not one toy. Not one. And I find that really interesting. But nonetheless. But anyway, she had my well-being at heart, though it being misguided, or albeit misguided. And you notice there's no jet engines in the background today. I'm not even at the airport. I'm in my studio. On land. Not in the air, not on the water. Right here on dry land. But she would give me these pants, for example, that were like totally inappropriate for me. I say that as the person who had to wear the damn things. I had a pair of wool pants, which were supposedly my dress-up pants that went with my plaid-colored sports coat, if you can call it a sports coat when it's the size of a 7-year-old or whatever. And a tie, would you believe? I had these little clip-ons, that were pretty easy to put on, no tying involved. Even had a bow tie, as I recall. And as a side note, I don't have ties now. Well, I have a couple of ties I've had for decades because my father passed away and he was a salesman and therefore dressed up and wore a suit and tie. So I inherited my father's ties. He had a couple or so, Sure, I'll take them. They were my father's. I might wear them. I might need them at some point. Maybe. The funny thing is, probably they're still not out of fashion. And people probably still wear ties like my father wore. And so I learned to tie a tie, and I did wear a tie from time to time. I did a short stint as a stitch. I did for a short period of time. I was a salesman, like my father. I took over his job when he got sick and passed away. That was a disaster, pretty much. I didn't make much money at it, and I just wasn't good at salesman. Being a salesman, I just didn't really. My heart wasn't in it, but I felt obligated to do it, or at least give it a try. And I don't know what I was thinking when I came up with that excuse. But I thought, well, hell, this will be glorious, and I won't have to do any hard manual labor. I can just drive around in my car and walk into stores and stuff and say, hey, you want to buy stuff? And which is pretty much what I said. Yeah, here, you want to buy something? Not a born salesman. And speaking of that, my uncle on my father's side, Uncle Jim, was apparently a born salesman. Because he sold stuff. And he sold everything from fruits and vegetables to produce, as they call it. And had a produce market or three during his lifetime. But he was a pretty cool guy, actually. But at any rate, I wandered off to my uncle. Why do I do that? Anyway, my grandmother was insistent and persistent, and I had to go, so I went. So at that young age, even then, I said to myself, I've got to think of a reason why I would do this. And since, why would I wouldn't volunteer to do it, but, I had to give myself some reasoning for allowing myself to be dragged off to school, to church. Now, just to be clear, I do not think that, I do not look at those times when I was younger, where I was dragged off to school, or to, why do I keep wanting to say that? Church, because there's so much similar things there, indoctrination, brainwashing. Educational system in America, the indoctrination centers, brain damaging places to go. So I had to give myself a reason for going, because pretty much I was, I was going, whether I liked it or not. So I came up with this, and maybe at about the age of 7 or so. I don't think I went to church with my grandmother much after, well, certainly not when I became a teenager. Because at that point I had acquired my voice, and I was quite adamant. Nope, not doing that, Grandma. Not going to happen. But I went, and I justified myself. I justified going because I'm pretty much obligated. And I asked myself, why would I go? And I said to myself, well, listen, I gotta go anyway. I mean, I'm a kid. I know what powers and rights do I have at that point? And I went, and apparently my mother approved of this, which is, not a good move on her part, but I don't hold it against her. She didn't know any better, because I'm pretty sure that my grandmother drug her children off to church too, including my mother. And the brain damage there is unrefutable, and I'm not even going to go into that, but I came up with a reason, and it was I am curious about churches and what goes on there, and the people that attend these churches, and the preachers, as we called them Curious, because, if you don't experience things, if you don't delve into things and study things, then how are you going to know? So I told myself, go to church, learn, listen, pay attention, see what's going on. You can always come to a conclusion about it. You can always have your own opinion, etc. But just go, experience it, see what it's like, and then you actually have something basis to express your thoughts on it. In other words, go, see what a crazy place it is and how delusional people are there, and listen to the ideas they produce, or they espouse, Jesus loves me, yes I know. Yeah, I went to that, and that's what they sang in Sunday school, and I didn't sing that, no. Because basically, my question was, while they were singing it, the Sunday school teacher and the other kids who didn't have a clue, while they were singing, Jesus loves me, yes I know, and I'm saying, how do I know this? How do I know this? Songs and music as indoctrination tools and brain-damaging apparatus. So I asked, figured, I'm allowed to ask questions. I've always thought that. I've always done so. So I asked questions, and of course the Sunday school teacher, she's like, I'm not asking that question. She gave me some kind of cockamamie answer, like, because the Bible says so. And this was way before I actually took it upon myself to read the Bible, which I did front to back, and which I did when I was in my 60s, I believe. Early 60s, since I'm still in my 60s. I read it front to back, Old and New Testaments, and King James Version. And, or as I like to say, the English translation. Seeing as how the Bible was not written in English originally. So it's a translation. And probably abridged to some degree. There are a lot of ancient, well, not a lot maybe, but there are ancient writings on stone tablets and scrolls and things, and they're not in the Bible for some reason. I wonder why. And if you examine those writings, if you can get access to them, which is sometimes difficult because they're like the Vatican, the Pope guy, as I call him, Poop. You got those things locked up in the basement somewhere in the Vatican. So no human eyes can lay hands on them and see them and read them and say, what the fuck? So that's one of the things I have against the Catholic Church and the Pope, is that they have this vast conspiracy to keep knowledge away from people. And that's just wrong. I think it's criminal. Certainly immoral. And when you're talking about a church like the Catholic Church and the hierarchy of it, and the Pope guy, I don't think you really want to say something about that church that's going to be like a total contradiction. Like they say, hey, we'll tell you the truth, and then they say, no, we're not, because it's in the basement and you're never going to know. I actually wonder why people don't call on the Pope to, shoot himself or whatever. No, that wasn't what I was going to say. I don't know why people don't demand to know what's in those archives. Secreted away so that no human being can see them. As I understand it, some people are given special privilege to go into the archives and kind of look around for whatever reason, research and so on. I'm guessing if you're not a Catholic, you're not getting in there. Which means I'm never going to get in there. But I don't understand why the people of the world don't demand to see what's in there, know what's going on. Like, tell us, we have a right to know, it's knowledge. And you can't keep knowledge from us. That makes you a freaking bastard. In some sense, censoring what we, people of the earth, are allowed to know. And read and so on. Censorship. Not a good thing, ever. I don't understand why the people of the world don't say, hey, we want to see what's in there, and we're going to see in there. And you're either going to open the doors and let us in, or we're going to just kick the doors in. Because it's knowledge, and it's world knowledge, and human, and reality of the world. There's stuff that we are not allowed to see and read, and so on. That's wrong, and they shouldn't be. They shouldn't be allowed to get away with it. But it does tell you the fact that they keep information hidden away and secreted away from us, the human race. Oh, I mean species. Human race, that's something else. It's a case of where I use a word that doesn't mean what they think it means. Which is another show, another time. All right, so my grandmother and I said to myself, well, I'll study these people, I'll see what's going on, and then I'll have some knowledge firsthand of what inside of a church is all about and what's going on there. In fact, I went to church one time, and I was an older lad. I was probably in my teens, early teens, and I just think back now, just realizing that why? Well, I was following up on my previous theory is let's study, let's see, let's observe, let's analyze, let's figure this out, let's see what's going on there. And so I went for like a research project. And I learned stuff, and I learned what they do in a church, in particular churches. I went to several different churches when I was young. For the same reason. I even went to a Catholic service one time just to see what that was all about. And, seeking truth, seeking knowledge. A very basic principle that every human being should adopt. Be curious, look for answers, and seek the truth, and be logical about it. Not some kind of mindless drone who just does whatever they're told because, the Pope said do this. I'm not a Catholic. I've never been Catholic. I thought about it once for about 10 seconds and said, because I figured if I was to go there, I could get in deeper with the Catholics and find out more about what they're doing and thinking and why and shit. Because I'm always curious about things like that. I want to know why people do things. I want to know why people think stuff. I want to know what's wrong with them if they think stupid shit. Like, I'm a Christian, and I'm like, fucking tell me why. Why would you be that? Why? What's the appeal in that nonsense? I can call it nonsense now, and I could call it nonsense when I was a teenager because, I observed, I read, I thought, I considered, came to a conclusion that it's fucking mythological nonsense. These people are Looney Tunes. I mean, they're just Looney Tunes. Certainly not intelligent people. So at any rate, I went, I studied, I observed, and I came to conclusions. And I consider any knowledge to be a good thing. To acquire knowledge is a good thing. And it's honorable. And it's useful. So I went, I studied, I learned about the people, about their beliefs, about their practices, about their church services, and so on. And those conclusions and observations have not changed much in 60 years. So the point of that was a little background into my being, and so it was like I went to Baptist church, Methodist church, and so forth. My grandmother had 2 or 3 different churches she liked to go to. And it was quaint to learn about this quaint little thing these Christians were doing. So anyway, and then I was an agnostic. Because at the age of 11, I looked out the window at night, in my bedroom one night, and I looked and the stars were shining, and the moon was up there glowing, and I'm thinking, I just can't comprehend a universe that doesn't ever end. I just can't comprehend forever. Unlike most people, I didn't have to come up with some sort of fairy tale idea about what's on the other side of the universe, what's beyond the end of the universe, or what's the purpose and all that stuff. And like, I didn't need fairy tales. I didn't need mythological nonsense to, satisfy my mind and my curiosity. I just simply accepted the fact that I didn't know, couldn't understand, never will know, never will understand, because it's just impossible. You just can't know what you can't know. Now, at the time, I just said to myself, and to appease myself so I could actually go to sleep, because I was laying in bed and I was like, what the fuck? I can't stop thinking about this weird freakiness that's like, the universe is forever. I can't sleep because of this obsession with understanding this concept. So at 11, I told myself, and I remember, as if I'm standing there right now, I can remember it as fresh as that. But as if I just did it, and that I'm just doing it right now. That's how clear my memory is of that. My memory of that time, that period, and that event. So I told myself, I can't know, it's impossible to know, it's unimaginable, but apparently that's the way it is. Because I certainly wasn't going to buy into that premise that, the universe stops and then there's heaven. No, I didn't fall for that. I didn't allow that foolishness to sink into my brain. I accepted the fact that I didn't know. Nobody did, and probably and perhaps nobody ever will. Where does the universe stop, and what's on the other side? And if there's something on the other side of the universe, then what is it? And how can a galaxy exist in a universe? And how can a universe exist in the bigger universe? Just didn't make sense. There was no answer. And believe me, I've asked the question and I've never gotten an answer. Get fairy tale ideas. Oh, that's where heaven is, dear. Yeah, wrong. No. And Jesus loves me. Yes, I know. Well, I don't know. And by the way, Jesus is dead. I mean, they make a big deal about this thing that Jesus was murdered by the Jews or Romans or whoever. Murdered. Put on a cross. Murdered. I know, you could say, well, he was executed for his crimes against the Roman Empire or whatever. Or the Jews. Okay, Hebrews. So, yeah. I just can't wrap my brain around the concept that I can actually talk to a dead person and it matters. That's just, I'm sorry, that's retarded. So how do I know there's no God? Well, since I couldn't prove there was, and I couldn't really prove there wasn't at the time, I can pretty much logically prove there is no God now. No Christian God at any rate. And I don't care about other gods, like Greek gods, Roman gods, Indian gods, Chinese gods, or whatever. I don't care about those at this point in time, right now. It's their poison, not mine. I don't have to live under that nonsense. I do have to live under a system that is based upon Christians doing their thing, and causing brain damage to children is one of their things, apparently. Or at least mind damage. I mean, my brain still functions normally. I didn't have any, didn't have any brain damage. I had mind damage. Which, by the way, I've survived and thrived on that situation. And I'm perfectly intelligent and sane. Not insane, and sane. So I went to church, and I learned, and I studied, and I figured it out. And I went to high school, and even in college, I was in the Methodist thing, and the Catholic thing, and was curious and delved into it and figured out what the hell. And came to some conclusions and observations about that, and so on. So I became a Unitarian Universalist, joined a church in Boston called the Church of Larger Fellowship. The minister of that church in Boston was a gay fella who had a pardoner. No secret. And they accepted him, even back then. And this has been like 30 years ago or more. The thing I was attracted to with with those folks from the Unitarian Universalists is that they said God is what you discover him thing to be. In other words, they believed it was an individual quest to discover what God was, or wasn't. Except that they did include in their creed that there was only one God. And when I say one God, I mean one, not as opposed to like the Greek gods of hundreds or thousands. And also that God, well, no Trinity is what I'm getting at. There wasn't any Father, Son, Holy Spirit, that sort of thing. One God. And it was God, not Jesus. Jesus, maybe a prophet. Or someone of interest that you could study and kind of figure out, what that was all about. I'm sure there are insights into Jesus in the archives in the basement of the Vatican. Because, I've heard stuff. So, anyway. Why isn't the Apostle of Mary not in the Bible, by the way? I wonder why. Whichever Mary was that allegedly wrote this book, Xenia's house, probably didn't know how to write. Peasants and peons didn't learn to write back in those days. In fact, you probably even had kings that couldn't read and write. I have a scribe, I have an advisor, what do I need to read for? And I have secretaries to write letters. So, I'm cool. So I was an Unitarian Universalist for some time because I believed in the principle that seeking knowledge was a basic premise behind being a Unitarian. And because it was a humanist religion, it fell under the category and protections of humanism. And as a result of being a part of that, I got information. And a satisfying insight. And I realized that I can't be an agnostic when there's evidence that I probably should be an atheist as far as Christianity is concerned. And actually now it's all religion, pretty much. And I really dig it when those people, they say, atheism is a religion. They're totally stupid and don't have any idea what they're talking about, because no, it's not. And the fact that I should have to explain that to somebody is preposterous. However, apparently we do have to tell them, say, excuse me, you're wrong, and here's why. I should know what my religious beliefs are, and they're not what you just said they are, you dumbass. So, at any rate, I evolved, shall we say, into an atheist. And I've read books from atheists. I know people who are an atheist, and Bertrand Russell, for example, was one of the more famous atheists. And apparently he was called a philosopher. And I guess he could qualify for that title, but he was just a curious man who actually thought logically and came to logical conclusions and made critical analytic observations of humanity. My kind of guy. And he lived to be like 98 years old, and he was like, gee, that kind of proves the theory that, if you're an atheist and you talk, say God doesn't exist and shit, you're going to be like, God will strike you dead, Apparently God didn't really feel too badly about, Bertrand Russell spouting out his truth and his observations about what went on in reality, and lived to be 98. So I think he must have lucked out there, because God didn't smite him down at all. On the other hand, so I became, at that point I realized that I can't claim to be a Universalist or a Unitarian Universalist, because they brought that one God thing in there as part of their premise, their creed. But no. So anyway, I couldn't accept that anymore. I couldn't say I'm a Unitarian Universalist, yay me, because it's an enlightened thing. And I'm like, but they believe there's one God, and they believe that you can define that God any way you see fit based on your evidence and knowledge that you've learned over your lifetime. And you can say, I've learned this, analyzed it, I put it in my brain, and it comes out with a conclusion that says, yeah, I can decide what God is. Well, I did. And I concluded that God was, get it? Okay, all kind of things came out. God is gravity. God is love. God is all the good things in the world. God is God. And that I did. Yeah, but that's just kind of cheating, isn't it? That's like I'm claiming a religious symbol as my own, even though it is totally contradictory to what I believe. Which is, for one thing, logic, which tells me that logically, nope, can't be. And there are various reasons and explanations I could give you, but I'm not going to do that now. Running out of time already. 37 minutes into the show. Damn, sure does fly. When you're rambling on. So, I decided that, no God, and it's all mythological nonsense, and why would anybody in their right mind believe that? Well, there's a clue. They're not in their right minds. They're fucking retarded. Delusional, which is insanity, by the way. And some of them are just pretty much annoying and obnoxious, because they say stuff that's just totally not true, not even possibly be true. It's just totally illogical, and it's just insane to believe certain things. And what is the definition of delusional? Believing something in spite of the fact that you have been proven wrong, and it isn't true. I'm going to believe it anyway. Someone actually said to me, some silly woman once on the internet, told me, I'm going to go with faith instead of logic. In other words, she's going to go by some sort of biased, ignorant process of contemplating things over, being logical, truthful, honest, and genuinely intelligent. Well, I think the word faith is okay if you're applying it to some practical application. For example, I have faith that the sun will be there where it is today. I trust it'll be there tomorrow. That's nothing more than just assuming. But I don't use it as a basis for living my life. I don't use it as some sort of moral creed to determine how I should live my life. It's just there. And science tells us certain information about that. Like it's been around for approximately 5 billion years. Our sun, I'm not talking about the suns in other galaxies, just ours. And so what happens is I've become a fan of such websites as Atheist Republic, for example, and certain other websites, and like say Facebook pages that are like constantly showing lies and incorrect information in the Bible. All the reasons why you should not be a Christian and believe that mythological nonsense. And the harm that it does to people. Like, you indoctrinate a 5-year-old with this nonsense, that's child abuse. I mean, if there is child abuse, that's it. And that's just unacceptable. It just is. So now I'm an atheist. As far as Christianity is concerned, as far as other religions in general are concerned, I could be an agnostic. Could be, maybe, in some cases. Like, I don't know. Just don't know. Can't know. Accept that. I accept that. Just, it's beyond my comprehension as a human being. Which leads me to think that it's beyond the concept and comprehension of most people who believe in Christianity and other religions like Islam and so on. Which is really a stupid religion. If there ever was one, it was stupid. Really. So, I was just talking about when I was young, and my evolutionary process of growing up, maturing, and actually becoming a little bit more of a practicing intellectual. And so, okay. So anyway, I said that, I had said that, I had to say that, I did say that, I was obsessed with saying that, I said it in the form of a monologue, seeing as how, nobody's talking back to me. Now, if you want to say something about this, post a comment on the comment section of wherever you're seeing this, listening to this podcast. Whether it be YouTube or whatever. You can comment. You're allowed. If you say something stupid, I will probably tell you so. Like, your idea is illogical and therefore stupid. And so, I don't expect everybody to agree with me. I don't expect everybody to go along with what I say. I expect them to do some research and figure it out for themselves. That's part of the Unitarian Universalist thing that I actually retained in my life afterwards. Study, learn stuff. Stop just believing in stupid shit because your grandparents put it in your brain. Break free of that. Liberate yourself from that because it's just like, I believe in rotting cantaloupes. Just silly. Pretty much the same thing. I believe in the nature of the law of God that says a pumpkin left in the field over the winter will rot. Just the way it is. Alright, I'm going to stop now and I'll post this later on when I get to it. It'll be on the radio station. If you're listening to it, then I posted it. If you're not listening to it, then it doesn't really matter, does it? Alright, so I'll catch you next time. See ya. Bye-bye.